sequentially to mortality from certain specific diseases.
The body and the head might follow.
Supporters of same-sex marriage cheered the Ninth Circuit's decision.
In D.C., hundreds rallied in the rain Saturday.
One, invasion of privacy. We find the defendant guilty or not.
Held in solitary confinement at a military detention center in the U.S.
Ruled that he found evidence that race was not only a significant factor in striking down potential
activists in trying to halt forced abortions and sterilizations.
1,000 North Carolina voters have already turned out for early voting, more than in
I'm Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I farmed on the Marlowe plantation for 18 years. I had charge of keeping up with the time and paying off, and I went down the 31st of August to try to register. And after I had gotten back home, Mr. Marlowe told me that I would have to go down and withdraw my registration or leave, because they wasn't ready for that in Mississippi. And I said, Mr. Marlowe, I'm trying to register for myself. So I had to leave that same night after I had gone down in August. And then I spent one night with Mrs. Tucker, and after about 2 days in September, they shot in the house 15 times, thinking that I was there.
Scary. They released a statement that said, quote, gay marriage advocates have attempted to portray same-sex marriage as a civil right. Gay marriage is not a civil right. You see the push for equal rights for gay and lesbian Americans as a civil rights movement.
Very much so.
As an extension of the civil rights movement.
It is exactly the same, and it's a right that all Americans have, and no reason why gay and lesbian people ought not to have these rights too. These are universal rights.
I think some people African Americans who do not like the movement for equality being described as a civil rights movement, do you think they feel that in somehow takes away from
yes, I think they
the struggle that African Americans have gone through and continue to?
Wrongly so, but if they knew that Bayard Rustin, a gay man, was the guy who put together the March on Washington, and it wouldn't have been the success it was had it not been for him, I think they'd feel differently about it. If they knew that throughout the history of the black struggle for civil rights, black and white and Asian and Latino gay people and lesbians participated and sacrificed alongside their black brothers and sisters, I think they'd feel differently about it. Because this is not, we don't have a patent on rights in this country. Black people don't have a patent on fighting for civil rights. This is something all Americans want to do and should do.
June of 1963, we had a closed-door, serious meeting about who was going to lead the march and who was going to be head of the March on Washington. A. Philip Randolph wanted Bayard to be the leader. And in the mind of Martin Luther King Jr. and myself, there was no one better prepared to lead and give direction and mobilize. Rustin was the person. But Roy Wilkins, as head of the NAACP, felt that Rustin couldn't be the person because it would be embarrassing to the march, embarrassing to the movement, because he was gay. But we knew that if we selected A. Philip Randolph and give him the power to select his deputy, as elected person who would put the March on Washington together, he would select Rustin, and that's exactly what happened.
Rustin had less than 2 months to organize what was expected to be the largest peaceful demonstration in American history.
Robert Kennedy, when he was Attorney General, said that he could imagine the possibility of a Negro president in the United States within perhaps 40 years. Do you think this is at all realistic?
Well, let me say first that I think it is necessary to make it clear that there are Negroes who are presently qualified to be president of the United States. There are many who are qualified in terms of integrity, in terms of vision, in terms of leadership ability. But we do know that there are certain problems and prejudices and mores in our society which make it difficult now. However, I am very optimistic about the future. Frankly, I have seen certain changes in the United States over the last 2 years that surprised me. I've seen levels of compliance with the Civil Rights Bill and changes that have been most surprising. So on the basis of this, I think we may be able to get a Negro president in less than 40 years. I would think that this could come in 25 years or less.
But I have to tell you that over the course of several years, as I talk to friends and family and neighbors, when I think about members of my own staff who are in incredibly committed monogamous relationships, same-sex relationships, who are raising kids together, when I think about those soldiers or airmen or Marines or sailors who are out there fighting on my behalf and yet feel constrained, even now that Don't Ask, Don't Tell is gone, because they're not able to commit themselves in a marriage. At a certain point, I've just concluded that for me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
It's about justice. It's about the American dream. It's about the hope that we all long for. 48 million Americans in poverty, 15 million who have no job. That is the heart of the civil rights struggle. Because Dr. King's last effort was a poor people's campaign. It's about a moral commitment to defend the poor and to deliver the needy.
Proposition 8 serves no purpose and has no effect other than to lessen the status and human dignity of gays and lesbians in California. When Proposition 8 passed in November 2008, it brought an abrupt end to 5 months when same-sex marriage was legal in California. The fact that same-sex couples had once been allowed to marry was a key factor in the appeals court decision, says law professor Evan Lee.